New World Order for Dummies, why people refuse to wake up. Getting people to wake up may just be an exercise in futility, and I'll try and illustrate it here. Most people, even when presented with empirical evidence, will fight you at every turn to not want to accept that there is even the possibility of a different version of reality than what they've been conditioned to believe. Meaning, instead of where we are today in the world being the result of random events, it's quite clear that it's been orchestrated by design by the people at the top, a handful of families. First, I met a stranger at a dinner a while back, and he basically said that anyone who doesn't believe the official government version of events is nothing more than a conspiracy theorist. And as I didn't know him, I just didn't put too much stock into his ignorance. And then I was reacquainted with a guy who I met not long after 9/11. And back then he was appalled that I questioned the official version of events. Now, given that since then a multitude of evidence has been available to not only disprove the official version, but suggest quite clearly that it was a Saudi, Israeli, US-led operation. And when he asked whether he'd changed his mind on the events, not only hadn't he changed his mind, but he went out of his way to not want to hear any other explanation. So when I mentioned a few glaring holes in the official story, he was quite adamant in not wanting to hear them. So if he wasn't questioning the government story on this, then what about the Vegas shooting? What about Sandy Hook, Boston bombing, etc., etc.? Again, he seemed a bit uneasy that someone would even question the authorities. Finally, I asked him, and this is where you can gauge people. I asked him if he believed that JFK was killed by a lone gunman. I feel, like I say, that is a good gauge of seeing where people lie in their understanding of history. I told him, I said, well, of course, the amount of shots that were fired were too fast for Oswald rifle, but they were even captured on video coming from different angles, so it was impossible for him to be the lone shooter. Finally, but reluctantly, he seemed to accept that maybe the authorities hadn't been 100% transparent with the truth. And so I said, well, if they lied about that, what makes you think they haven't lied about all the other life-altering events that we understand are false flag events? And basically what he said was, I've put so much stock into institutions like the New York Times, the Washington Post, mainstream media and the government, that he couldn't fathom that they'd been steering him wrong for all these years. And I tried to tell him that of course these entities at one point have been 100% credible institutions, but they'd long since been purchased and infiltrated by the 1%, and now we're only promoting the New World Order agenda. Finally just said, look, I don't care, as it doesn't affect me. Now, when I pointed out that it was affecting him on a daily basis with, new restrictions, new tariffs, taxes, fluoride in the water, chemtrails, GMOs, soon to be 5G, his tax dollars promoting genocide in Palestine and Yemen, amongst other places, he basically said, look, change the subject. Okay, now I do want to reiterate, this video is not meant to criticise or embarrass anyone that doesn't realise yet that a handful of families are steering the world towards incalculable horrors. It's purely to illustrate that people that you would consider intelligent, or even above average intelligence in certain cases, can be so habituated by the system that not only will they reject any new information available, they will fight to keep the status quo and therefore assist in their own and inevitably their children's enslavement. Then the other day I had a backwards eureka moment, if that's even a thing. A guy I've known since I was a kid who had vehemently rejected any of my posts regarding the push for a one world government. He phoned me, and so I finally had the chance to try and explain any of the subjects that I tried to expose, from GMOs, false flags, chemtrails, Agenda 21, 5G, etc. Anyway, we landed on chemtrails, and ironically, as you can see in the reflection, they're spraying again today, but if you can see that, that's one thing. That's kind of the crux of this video, yeah? Can you see that? Can you see it? I'll turn it around real quick. Sky full of chemtrails. Anyway, so we landed on chemtrails, so he asked for any evidence, and I said, well, I've always, you know, told you, go and Google chemtrails, Google geoengineering, you know, Google Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and all will become apparent. And his answer was, no one has the time to do that. The onus is on you to provide the evidence. Now, I just thought that was an apathetic, indifferent attitude to not even want to consider that we've been lied to. But anyway, I just, you know, went online, and within 2 minutes, I'd sent him like 5 links to show him what's going on in the skies. Now, incidentally, I did send him a link from Harvard, who are one of the outlets that have actually admitted now that they are spraying. So again, I'm not sure how you guys will reconcile that now, yeah, because they've actually admitted that they are spraying, but they're calling it a solar shield. They're saying it's to cool the planet down. But anyway, now I sent him these links, and then the next day or the day after, I said, you know, what do you reckon? He says, oh, sorry, I'm busy, I haven't had time to do it, you know, I haven't had time to look at them. Now, we all know that's code for can't be arsed, right? Yeah, you know, you haven't got 5 minutes to look at information that potentially, you know, can affect your life. So that was when I had that backward eureka moment, because I finally was hit with the realization of how far the brainwashing had taken effect on some people, yeah, for them just be so unresponsive. Not was he unwilling to do any research himself, but he wasn't even prepared to look at evidence when it was presented to him on a silver platter. And that's the million-dollar question, yeah, why? That's the one thing I can't fathom, but I do have a couple of suggestions. One, is it fear that what I'm saying may have an element of truth, and therefore by not believing it, it means that it's not true, yeah? Essentially burying your head in the sand. I mean, is it hubris? You know, they're 100% sure that what they've been taught is the truth, and therefore they don't need to hear any other evidence, yeah? Is it apathy? Do you know what I mean? Something may be going on, but it won't affect me because I live over here or I live over there, and therefore, you know, I don't even have to worry about it. I mean, I can only gauge the human condition by my own actions, and that's curiosity. I don't know anyone that wouldn't be curious about anything, never mind, you know, what's going on in the world today. You know, if I'm presented with a notion that contradicts a previous one, I look at both sides, and if the new evidence is valid, I change my opinion, yeah? It's simple as that. Or is it what I fear the most? And that's mind control. I mean, if you are one of the reticent people I've been referring to here, you've probably never heard of MKUltra, but it's a tool used by the CIA to enable unsuspecting innocent people to engage in nefarious acts on their behalf. You know, Lee Harvey Oswald was one of these guys, you know, Mark Chapman was another. You can bet your bottom dollar that, you know, every one of the suspects in the last round of, you know, public shootings have all been victims of this brainwashing tool. The way that they've achieved mass brainwashing of the populace is through, amongst other things, your television. I mean, that's why they call programs, yeah, because the TV is programming you every time you watch it. They understand that the frequencies coming through the TV, coupled with fluoride and GMOs and vaccines, this, that and the other, can work together to influence certain people, affecting their ability to see what's right in front of them, brainwashing them essentially. Again, if you convince yourself that you remember the skies looking like this in the 70s, So what do you see here in front of you? Do you see anything unusual? Or just you see regular sky? Depending on the conditioning, the fluoride in the water, if you see a natural sky, then unfortunately you've been dumbed down. What part of this looks normal to you? I implore you, show me a sky that looked like this 20 years ago. Unfortunately, you've been a victim of brainwashing. I mean, I get it, you will never accept that, but the skies didn't look like that in the 70s, so where you're getting that memory from, God knows. I mean, it sounds simple, yeah, but essentially, that's what's going on. You're so reliant on hearing that friendly voice coming down the TV that until they tell you that something bad is going on, you probably won't do anything about it. But seeing as all the mainstream media outlets now are run and controlled by the 1%, they're not going to tell you things like this. I mean, I really shouldn't have to point that out to you, but that's what I'm alluding to again. That's the million-dollar question. Why can some people see it and why can others not? I mean, we all got to admit that this world, it's going to fucking hell in a handbasket, yeah? I mean, it really is, and yet people just blindly accept it, or again think it's random occurrences. This is by design, people. So if you're still watching this and you have been one of the people I'm referring to, does that not invite you to do a little bit of research? Does that not incite you to do a bit of a research? I don't know what else I can do. As I say, it's futile. It's it's information you don't want to even acknowledge, never mind accept. Fundamentally, you will never accept that you've been brainwashed. And herein lies the problem. You know, there's certain people that are only capable of absorbing the information that is presented to you by your screen and therefore by the agenda. So basically, my take home from this is essentially people are insistent on marching to their own demise, even if it kills them.